Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/JoshuaVelas and become a $2 backer today and get early access to the new episodes. I'll be leaving a link in the description down below, but for now, on to today's episode. You're listening to the Augment Experience podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Joshua Velas. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down every week to talk about all the latest news in the technology, business, and video game world. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Velas. I'm your host as usual, and obviously, welcome back to the show. Today's episode 185 of this show, and before we get started, I'm going to do a house cleaning quick because, well, you guys know I like to do it around here, and it only makes sense that we do it. So let's get on with the house cleaning because we do got a good amount to talk about today. I'm just being honest with you. I do want to say thank you guys for coming back and listening. It does really mean a lot to me, guys. Constantly keep taking time in your days to download these episodes, to share these episodes, to constantly keep letting me know how you feel, which I greatly appreciate it, whether you like my stupid face or not. Obviously, here we are back to the video versions. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you get to see my lovely and beautiful face, which I know I got to go get a haircut and probably go get my beard and stuff done because I'm starting to look like a caveman out here. So yeah, starting to catch up to me. But thank you guys so much for coming back and listening or watching these episodes, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to listen to your podcast. I do want to say thank you to the Patreon backers. Thank you guys so much for your support. I also want to say, yes, I get that this episode is a little bit delayed. I've been really busy with school and I had tests basically this week. So, and it's still going to be that way next week. So just be patient with me, guys. Like if we have to push the episode back on Friday, that's literally because of school. So, school comes first. But again, thank you to the Patreon backers. You guys are great. But I think it's fair that we go straight into the episode, given that there's so much to talk about. And it's I wouldn't say it's a controversial episode, but I will say that what happened at the Apple event this year screams like something wasn't right. And I know I'm going to sound like a conspiracy theorist. I know I'm going to sound like an Alex Jones right now. So, but I do want to make it clear that yes, something weird happened this year. Like this did not feel like a traditional Apple event. This definitely didn't feel like something felt horribly off, specifically at one portion, which we'll get to that. But what exactly happened this year? So this year's Apple event, we saw the new products as expected. We saw the new iPhone. We saw the new Apple Watch. There were conflicting reports that they were going to do a separate event for the MacBooks and the iPads, which it seems like this year is not the case. So I guess the MacBooks will have their own separate event, which will kind of be interesting to watch. But the fact that we started the event with the base iPad, we knew the base iPad gets a refresh. It happens every single year. The baseline iPad, that's the affordable one. That's just, if you want an iPad, you can have an iPad. I think it's nice that we keep getting a refresh every year. It's usually the best selling tablet, especially for especially for schools that use the tablets in their programs. The same things for businesses like using the regular base iPad just to, do transactions and stuff like that. Cause it's a nice little piece of hardware. It really is. And I'm glad that we keep getting a refresh every year. It's like, hey, great, no harm, no foul. I think with the 813, that's going to be good value, especially at $329, and then the education discount being $279. So overall, good value. So nothing new to really talk about there. This is where it gets a bit finicky. So, well, not exactly, but here, this whole transition after this is where it gets weird. So we move on to the iPad mini, and clearly this was another leak that was mentioned by Jon Prosser and many other people that we were going to expect a new iPad mini this year. It was due for a refresh, and personally, the iPad mini was my favorite thing that was shown off at this entire event. I think it was the most useful item for a lot of people because a lot of people do like the iPad mini, especially a lot of college students like taking notes on it, like just handheld notes, and just a nice portable device that you can watch videos on and do whatever you want on it, because I personally like the mini. The mini has always been one of my favorite iPads that has been in the lineup, so it getting the refresh to now look more like the modern design with, like how the Pros look, and then obviously with USB-C, which is still funny because now the only iPad that doesn't have USB-C is the baseline, and also the iPhones don't have USB-C. Kind of funny when now all of your tablets have USB-C except the baseline, which makes sense. But, you know, it's kind of funny, Apple. You guys still don't want to put USB-C on an iPhone when it would be the best thing to do. They still won't do it. But overall, I think the iPad mini with the refresh having the A15, they didn't mention the processor in the original showing due to the fact that they didn't want to spoil the surprise, which makes sense because the iPhone had the A15 and they wanted to make it a big deal. So it makes sense that the iPhone, they wanted to save the A15 reveal for the iPhone reveal. And then obviously after they did the recap and everything, and they're like, yeah, the iPad mini powered by the A15. I'm like, okay, so now we know. Because some people were actually generally worried during the event that this iPad mini was going to have like the A14 or A12 or something like that, which I'm like, no, it's definitely the A15. They just want to save the surprise for the iPhone 13. But here is where things got a bit finicky. So a lot of people, and I've mentioned this many times before, when it comes to Apple events, Apple does an incredible job with their cinematography. They do a great job at editing these things, always beautiful transitions, very smooth, very professional like, which makes sense because, you know, they definitely pride themselves in being, you know, excellent when it comes to cinematography, especially for their events and promotions. But the transition to the Apple Watch was janky. It felt, this is where we're going to start going to conspiracy theory, which I know Jon Prosser did a video about this too, and a lot of people have mentioned this online as well, where the transition seemed very out of place. It seems like the Apple Watch section of the event did not really fit with the whole presentation. It felt very weird. It felt very off. It screamed like something was off from the get-go, and I noticed this during the live, when I was watching it live with my friends, that something didn't seem right. Something seemed very off. And it was clear, especially given what we saw with the leaks, that we were expecting a new Apple Watch redesign, and this year we didn't get a redesign. We got something completely different. And given how the event went along, something screams that something went wrong with the Apple Watch, that clearly there's something going wrong behind the scenes that we're just not aware of, and we probably will be aware of as time goes on. Especially the fact that they didn't give us the release date for the Apple Watch, and they didn't mention anything about the specifications like they normally do. They didn't mention anything about battery life. They didn't mention anything about like the processor like they normally do. Like we later found out that it's actually the same processor in the Series 6. So the Series 6 and the Series 7 are identically in terms of performance, are the exact same item. Now, the only difference is that the new Series 7 will charge faster, which is, you know, I think that's cool. Ironic, it comes with a USB-C cable in the box. Again, guys, come on, just switch to USB-C. I just think with the whole Apple Watch, it's definitely seems off. There's no logical way you could try to do mental gymnastics around this. It's clear as day that something is off with the Apple Watch, especially because we don't have any information regarding the release date. We don't have, like, mass production is going to begin in 2 weeks, and it's kind of concerning. It just makes it seem like something happened behind the scenes, that some people are firm believers right now that the leaks that we got were true, that this was going to be the Series 7. But because of mass production issues, because this was going to be the newest design that the Apple Watch has seen, because the Apple Watch has always had the same design for 6 years now. It's been the same design. Now it's going on to 7 years of having the exact same design. And I think it's just crazy to think about that that the leaks were showing that we were going to get finally a new design, so that the Apple Watch would fall in line with the whole iPhone design and being more boxy. And the fact that this seemed very rushed and put together, and this just screams like just rehashing old parts. I don't know. Do I believe that there's some big conspiracy going on, that Apple rushed to get the Apple Watch out, that they were having issues? If you could present a good enough argument, I could probably believe you. I think just the amount of evidence that's here right now and in front of us definitely screams that something didn't go right, that something is off. And I wouldn't be surprised in a couple months or maybe next year we find out, hey, there really was a big issue. Like, Apple just didn't know how to properly manufacture or mass produce the new design. So who knows? We'll find out in due time. I don't want to go and delve into the whole crazy conspiracy theories because I'm like, at the end of the day, they're just conspiracy theories. The leakers were wrong. We're not going to pretend like they weren't wrong. But at the end of the day, it just screams very suspicious that something is off. And the fact that the Apple Watch is also the only product that does not have an official release date definitely adds a lot of fuel to the fire. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below regarding that stuff. And now we obviously go into the iPhone. My opinion personally, I appreciate the smaller notch. We knew this was going to happen. I appreciate the bigger battery because Apple is finally realizing like, hey, maybe adding 5G under our phone, and we know that 5G drains the battery more, even though we claim to have this smart shift technology, like this smart technology that, we'll use 5G when you need it and 5G when you don't, and won't use 5G when you won't need it. I think it was them finally realizing like, hey, we probably should put a bigger battery in this thing because let's be real, 5G does take a hit at the battery, and people complain because the iPhone 12's battery life was just not as good as like say the 11 and the 11 Pro series. So I think it's nice that we're getting a bigger battery. I think a smaller notch is also appreciated. And I think the upgrades to the cameras are nice. I think it's actually really interesting though, personally, that the baseline iPhone 13, so the 13 and the 13 mini, will now have the main sensor from the 12 Pro Max. So now photos will be, much more stabilized, better low light photography. And now obviously the Pro series this year will have a new sensor, and they have the exact same camera. So this is definitely a shift away from how they handled the 12 series, where the 12 Pro and the 12 Pro Max had different main sensor cameras. So I think it's kind of nice that we're going back to this, that they both will have the same camera system. I think that's nice and fair. But obviously the big talking point was the 120 hertz, that we finally got it. There were rumors going around that the iPhone 12 series should have had the 120 hertz display. Clearly that didn't happen because of production issues, but now we finally have it. Now, I've been saying this for a while now. To me, the iPhone 13 definitely seems like a skip. I know some people will say, well, what about people on older iPhones? And I'm like, well, yeah, if you're like on an iPhone 6 or an iPhone 7, iPhone 8, then yeah, I could see you upgrading. I think that would be a logical move. I don't see why that would be an issue. But a lot of people have been asking me, have been asking other content creators. They've been asking them questions like, hey, if we have a 12 Pro, should we upgrade to the 13 Pro because the 120 hertz? And in the back of my mind, I'm like, why would you upgrade? You literally gain nothing. Like, nothing changes. Like, the overall experience of using the phone does not change. Some people will be like, oh, well, 120 hertz changes everything. And I'm like, not really. It just drains your battery life. Heck, they claim to have better battery life, but we don't know, because adding 5G and 120 hertz, yeah, it does put a strain on the battery. Let's not pretend like it doesn't. We still haven't seen this phone in action. There's people that haven't done battery tests to see how these things actually perform in real world use. So I think it's better to hold off and see how the battery performs given this new feature, because even though, yes, it's ProMotion, so it can scale downwards, it can scale upwards to 120 when you need it, I would still say wait. Let's see how this turns out. That's probably that's the best thing we really can do, is just see how the battery actually holds up, because that's a very important thing. But in my personal opinion, I think if you are in the 12 Pro, 12 Pro Max situation, upgrading to the 13 is not a logical move. Like, it just doesn't make much sense to upgrade. It really, you don't really gain much. You're not really doing anything differently, because that's always a debate people have had, which is, when you upgrade your product, what are you going to do differently? That's really the important question to ask, is, are you going to do anything differently than what you're already doing now that, you get the latest and greatest? Like, does anything really change? And I get it. There's some people that personally prefer to always have the latest and greatest. We're not going to pretend like that's not a normal thing. Like, it happens. We're not going to, it's normal. It happens. But we also have to acknowledge that, do you really need to? Like, you have to really ask yourself, like, do you really need the latest and greatest? Like, is it worth dropping like another $1,000+ to just constantly keep using your phone for scrolling through Twitter and Instagram and taking Snapchat photos? Like, are you really doing anything better? Because the iPhone 12 Pro is still doing that great. It's still doing its job. Like, it doesn't, just because a new phone comes out doesn't mean that's irrelevant, that it doesn't work anymore. Like, no, it still does the job. Nothing changed. Like, it's still good. It still does its job, guys. But in my opinion, I view the iPhone 13 as dead on arrival. That's just my personal opinion. I don't think anybody really should upgrade. I think if you're like in the older iPhone lines, this is a great time to upgrade, obviously because you have an older phone, so it makes sense. But in my opinion, the iPhone 13 definitely seems like an easy skip, especially given that we've seen leaks for the iPhone 4. And I know we're talking about leaks here. I'm not going to pretend like these leaks are 100% accurate. But if the rumors are true that next year will be the big redesign for the iPhones and that this was just a marginal improvement year, just polishing some fixes, or I'd say polishing some things from the iPhone 12 Pro series, and then obviously selling it as a 13. So this would be like the iPhone 13. You could pretty much just call it the 12S. That's really what it is, just an S upgrade. If next year truly is the big redesign where we're hearing that the notch will go away, which that was always a lot of issues people had with when the iPhone 10 came out, or the iPhone X, if you want to call it that the notch was like the biggest issue because people didn't really like the notch, which I agree. The notch is still horrendous. And I don't like that a lot of companies during that year began to adopt the notch. So, but I think it's kind of nice that next year it is rumored that the notch will go away, that the notch, like the sensors that actually go for Face ID, will go under the display, and it will just be the main sensor camera that will stay above, and the notch will be gone, so it'll just be a hole punch. I think it's going to be a really good time. Like for me, that's personally when I'll upgrade. I am going to upgrade with the 14 series. I just want to see the improvements done. I personally want to see what the improvements are with the 14. If it is true with the notch being gone, that's a good. And the rumors are that the iPhone are going to become much thicker now, which the iPhone should become much thicker given that they're using more powerful parts. They're using 120 hertz. They're using 5G. A bigger battery is definitely needed for these phones. I think it's fair. I think the camera, and especially the camera bump, getting much bigger. Like the 13 Pro's camera bump is much bigger than the 12 Pro's. That's just objective fact. Like that thing is actually bigger. So I think with the rumors of the camera bump finally becoming flush again because of the bigger battery and the bigger iPhones, I think that's great. I think that's what we need to do. I personally still stand by my opinion that the Pixel 6 and the 6 Pro are the most interesting phones of the year. I don't care about foldable smartphones. I don't think they're the future. I think this is just a gimmick that's going to die very quickly because it won't become mainstream, whether people will continue to think that it will. I think foldables will eventually die. I just don't see the practicality in them. They're not practical. You can try to argue with them as much as you genuinely want, but glass does not bend. You can try as much as you want. There's always going to be durability concerns, and you know, these suckers still do the job well, and they're not boring. It's just your use case hasn't changed, you know. But in my opinion, I think this Apple event was lackluster. I think it was very boring. I think besides the iPad mini is what definitely saved the event. I think that's a fair, reasonable assessment to say that the iPad mini definitely saved this event. I think the Apple Watch situation is very weird. I think it's very out of place, out of character for Apple to be this weird and awkward about things, especially with the Apple Watch, given that the Apple Watch is one of their most successful products that they've ever made. I think it's very odd that they're being weird about it. And you guys can have your own theories. You can watch tons of there's going to be tons of videos talking about the Apple Watch situation because it's just such a big thing that happened that it's just like Apple is being very weird with one of their biggest products. But at the end of the day, that's what I think about the event. I think it is interesting that we didn't see the new AirPods refresh. I think it's weird that we didn't see the new MacBooks, but I guess they're probably going to save that for an event together, putting the MacBooks and the AirPods together, which I think is going to be a very interesting idea to put them together as their own event, but we'll just have to wait and see. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you guys like the Apple event? Do you actually care about the iPhone 13? Are you going to plan on upgrading? You know, are you interested in buying an iPad? Are you going to buy the iPad mini? Does it suit your use case? Or how do you guys actually feel about the whole Apple Watch situation? Do you think it's weird? Or do you think it's just like, hey man, this is just how it is. Apple is Apple, you know, they're just doing their normal shtick. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below if you're watching the video version of this. So, you know, leave a like, leave a dislike, you know, however you guys feel. You can hit the subscribe button if you want, or hit the notification bell if you want to get notified when these things go live. Obviously, if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to listen to your podcast, leave a review of what you guys think about the show. But thank you guys so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. And just thank you guys for everything. Thank you guys for sharing this episode. Thank you guys for all the love and the support. It really does mean a lot to me. And also, thank you guys for helping us hit over 2,600 total downloads. I really, really do appreciate it. But until next time, guys, I'll see you guys next week. Hopefully, I do have tests next week, so we're going to try to get the episode on Wednesday. But if not, I'll let you guys know beforehand that the episode will be on Friday. But as always, guys, please continue to be safe. Don't do anything dumb. And please continue to be mindful and respectful of those around you, because the world is still a weird place, guys. Just keep being kind and being courteous to others, because that's really the best thing to do. But until next time, guys, I love you guys to death, and see you guys soon. Bye, guys. Hey there. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day and listening to today's episode. If you're interested in supporting the show, whether it be financially, clicking the follow button, or just sharing the episode, it all works for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I love you guys to death.